Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Wolper Wellbeing Forum hosted by Wolper Jewish Hospital and our special partner tonight, the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies. And our topic is protecting our mental health in this time of crisis, practical strategies to help our children and adolescents cope. And we're particularly offering guidance this evening to parents, grandparents and carers. My name's Julie McCrossin, and it's my genuine pleasure to be your host this evening. Let me begin by acknowledging that we're broadcasting to you on Aboriginal land, the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, for the bulk of our viewers tonight, and to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And just as some more people join us, I'd like to give you some quick housekeeping. As you know, with all our webinars, questions are most welcome. If you could put them in the Q&A, you can see the bottom, the thing to click on the bottom of your screen. Sometimes it's at the top of your screen. And we can't see or hear you. So your way of communicating with our panel this evening is through the Q&A. And our question moderator is General Practitioner Dr. Lena Safro. She will be watching your questions as they come in, and I will go to her regularly throughout the evening to bring your questions to our panel. All questions will be asked anonymously, and remember too that this is being recorded and will be available shortly on the Wolper Jewish Hospital website. We will try and answer as many questions as possible. If you are joining us for the first time, Wolper Jewish Hospital provides rehabilitation, medical and palliative care to everyone in the community within a framework of Jewish values and religious and dietary requirements. And it gives me pleasure to kick off proceedings this evening by welcoming Ruth Guth, who's the Community Partnership Officer at Wolper Jewish Hospital. Welcome to you, Ruth.
Hi, thanks, Julie. I'm going to read a prayer. At this time, we need to help our soldiers and the people in Israel as much as possible. So I'm going to read a prayer for the Israel Defense Forces in Hebrew and then in English. And I'd like you at the same time to keep in mind the hostages, that they should have health and well-being and come home safely. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzhak V'Yaakov, hu yevarech et chayalei tzva hagana liYisrael, ha'omdim al mishmar artzenu v'yarei Eloheinu migvul ha'vanon v'yad midbar Mitzrayim, umin hayam hagadol ad levo ha'arava v'yabasha ba'avir uvayam. Yiten Adonai et oivenu hakamim aleinu nigafim livnehem. Hakadosh Baruch Hu yishmor v'yatzil et chayaleinu mikol tzara v'tzuka mikol nega u'machala v'yishlach bracha v'hatzlacha v'chol maseh yedehem. Yedaber sonenu taktehem v'yatrem b'chete Yeshua uva'ateret nitzachon. Vikuyam bahem hakatuv. Ki Adonai Elohechem haholech imachem lehilachem lachem im oivechem lo shia etchem. V'nomar amen. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, may he bless the fighters of the Israel Defense Forces, who stand guard over our land and the cities of our God, from the border of the Lebanon to the desert of Egypt, and from the great sea unto the approach of the Arava, on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May the Almighty cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down before them. May the Holy One, blessed is he, preserve and rescue our fighters from every trouble and distress, and from every plague and illness. And may he send blessing and success in their every endeavor. May he lead our enemies under our soldiers' sway, and may he grant them salvation and crown them with victory. And may there be fulfilled for them the verse, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you to battle your enemies for you to save you. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And now it gives me pleasure to welcome a representative from our partner organisation, the Acting CEO of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, Michael Genscher. Welcome to you, Michael.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. So Julie has graciously given me 3 minutes to try and fit it all in, and I hope I do so adequately. If I don't, the offer is to please reach out to me anytime after this webinar. In representing the community, I'm here for the community, so beyond 3 minutes, please reach out. So the board's role, I guess, in relevance to this conversation is regards to support and advocacy. Especially in dealing with kids and school kids, we only have to look back. Last September 22, we had seen an unprecedented spike in anti-Semitic incidents reported in schools. I hate to say that those numbers seem rather insignificant to the numbers of incidents and occasions that we're seeing now. The numbers are concerning and frightening. So how the board works for the community and what we're doing for the community, especially our kids, is that I guess if there's one thing that I would like to get across to all of you, to all of us tonight, is that we need to know. You must report incidents. In order for us to do, we need to know. And I think one of the problems is the community is still unsure exactly how to report and who to report to. I could say there's a one-stop option without question. You can contact the Board of Deputies in terms of anti-Semitic incidents. Obviously, if there's concern of danger and personal safety, the police is always the first go-to. CSG, as well as asset protection in terms of seeing suspicious characters or something that doesn't seem right. The police and CSG, especially around the synagogues and the schools, are a very good option. When it comes to incidents of bullying, anti-Semitic activity at school, and I'll leave the universities to Alissa for this conversation, but we ask you to report everything. You know, identifying in our kids that there is even a problem. I've got 5 kids, and at the best time, I have no idea what any of them are doing or what's happening with them, except the younger ones. But if we do suspect something, or if we do know something, reach out to the board. We can then triage the situation, find out what the problem is, and then address the issue or direct you to the right service for your issue. So if you were to go to the Jewish Board of Deputies website, you could always call. The numbers on the website, but there is a button, a reporting button that we had to put up last year because of the sheer number of incidents that were being reported. We couldn't deal with the phone calls. So unfortunately, that portal is still very live on our website. Once we receive an incident report, we then triage it. We know whether to refer to police, the Department of Education, CSG, or Jewish House or Jewish Care if kids are or families are requiring support. What we do when we receive incidents is obviously we investigate and we work with partners in those investigations. Most of the time we wind up with the schools, specifically when it comes to the public schools where the principals essentially run the school. We usually wind up working with the principals, the ARCOs, and the parents in addressing the issue. Private schools move a little bit quicker in terms of addressing the issues because they can, and they do. One of the most critical parts of what we do in working with kids is, unfortunately, because we deal in this space so often, we know what anti-Semitism is. We know what anti-Semitic bullying looks like, what vilification looks like. All too often we get parents who will dismiss the incident as it's just kids or it didn't mean anything. And I know that's more Sandy's space, but it's important that we know, not to make a decision for you, but to give you the tools and to give you the support so that you can then make the decision how to move forward in the best interests of your kids. But like I said, I think 3 minutes is up. The most important thing I can get across tonight to you is please report. We have trained people on the other ends of the phone. All the incidents remain confidential. The only thing that is ever shared are the statistics with our other constituent organizations that work in this space. And please reach out. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you so much, Michael. And I just want to let everybody know that Michael Genscher is staying with us and for the entire webinar, and you can ask questions of him. If you have just joined us, the way to ask questions tonight is to go to the Q&A button and pop them in there. And we have General Practitioner Dr. Lena Safro monitoring the questions, and I will come to her regularly throughout the night. But look, let's introduce our panel. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Antony Milch, a child, adolescent and family psychiatrist, Sandy Hollis, the Head of Education at Sydney Jewish Museum. Dr. Danielle Einstein joins us again, having been with us in our earlier session, which was focusing particularly on adults. Tonight, we're focusing on children and adolescents in particular, but welcome to Dr. Danielle Einstein, a clinical psychologist, researcher, and author. And welcome, and the first person I'll speak to this evening is Alissa Foster, who's the current president of the Australasian Union of Jewish Students. I think, Alissa, you hand over your role quite shortly to someone else, but I'll just let everybody know that you're doing a double degree in arts and media, and I think you're currently joining us from a camp from the Australasian Union of Jewish Students. So welcome. This is deaf sign clapping, so I'm clapping you in advance. Just for people who may not be aware, what is your organisation and its key role?
Thanks so much, Julie, and thanks everyone for organising this and coming online. I think it's a really important discussion and needed discussion that's happening tonight. So yes, I am finishing up my term basically this week, but as president of the Australasian Union of Jewish Students, which is the peak representative body for Jewish tertiary students around Australia and New Zealand. We do a range of activities from planning social events on campus, barbecues, places for Jewish students to come and learn, while also working with the non-Jewish student cohort in educating them on the Jewish community and building those relationships, to facilitating international programs for Jewish students to go to Israel, to go to America, to go on other events, and also general support and advocacy for Jewish students.
And Alissa, I know one of your key messages tonight is the importance of reporting, as Michael has said. I'll come to that in a moment, because I think the first thing you want to discuss with our audience is that the universities in Australia are different from the universities in the United States and the United Kingdom. Can you explain that difference and why you think that is fundamentally a reassuring message?
Yeah, I think looking over what's been an incredibly hard 8 weeks for everyone, the one thing that's really stood out to me is exactly what you said, that what we're seeing on university campuses out of America, out of Europe, that I'm sure everyone here has seen some of the videos online or through WhatsApp groups, is absolutely horrendous. There's been some disgusting anti-Semitic attacks over there. We are really lucky that's not our campus environment here in Australia. It's never been. For the most part, students don't live on campus here. They live on campus in America and the UK in particular. Most students go to class for 2 hours and then they go home. They're not actively involved in student life. You can take that as a good or a bad thing in regular times, but what that has meant is the anti-Semitism that we do see at university campuses, while there are some extreme cases, it's much more rooted in the sort of student political systems on campus, and also rooted within the academic spaces as well. So the way we handle it and the way we support students, it is really different to how they address things across the world. And the biggest thing on this that I think is really important to emphasize for any parents and grandparents of university students or students coming into university who are here is the importance of not spreading misinformation and jumping to conclusions about what the campus life could be like. It's been 8 weeks of this. It has been exams. So a lot of people aren't actually on campus, which is worth noting, but that we have some incredible procedures in place and relationships with universities to deal with these things that come up.
I understand that like a key role of the Australasian Union of Jewish Students is that you build close working relationship with university administrations. And while there are differences across universities, both in terms of the culture of student politics and the degree of responsiveness of the administration. Fundamentally, you've got some good experiences. Could we use the example, even though it's slightly unnerving to hear this, but at Sydney Uni, a group wanted to hold an event about how to globalise the intifada. And can you explain what you were able to do as a union to deal with that proposed event?
Yeah, so as soon as after October 7th, that following week, we reached out to every single university administration in the country. We outlined to them what we anticipate is going to happen on campus based on previous experience and what support services we ask of them to be offering Jewish students at this time. One of those things was campus security needs to be really on top of what events can take place on campus and needs to have the mandate to shut them down. And what we saw at the University of Sydney was a small group of students, who've not new to doing these sort of events, I'll say politely. They planned to organize this event on campus. It was a booked room in a campus, like a campus classroom, and they put posters up all over campus about it. It was reported very quickly through to us, and we were able to, in conjunction with other community organizations who was also raised to them, reach out. We have a direct line of communication with campus security at the University of Sydney and with the Vice Chancellor's office. And we were able to say that, look, this sort of event, which on the poster featured a picture of the October 7th massacre, so is glorifying terrorism. It's not whether there's 10 people at the event or there's 100, it doesn't matter. Having these posters up on campus is making Jewish students feel incredibly unsafe for valid reason, and they put out a very strong message cancelling that event. And that relationship with campus security is really, really important for us.
Now, obviously, Alissa, some people hearing this are going to feel very disturbed and just hear what you've just said. Talk to me. People want to know, what can we say to Year 12 students who are going into Australian universities in 2024, or students who are currently there? What's your key message about what parents and grandparents, carers should be saying to their students?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. I have two. The first one is touched on what I mentioned earlier, is it's really important that Jewish students are signed up as AUJS members on the campus.
And AUJS union.
AUJS, yeah, the Australasian Union of Jewish Students. A lot of acronyms in our community. Signed up as members of AUJS. What they're able to do then is we're able to push out information about what is going on campus, accurate information, correct reporting resources, the phone numbers for mental health support that is available to all students at your university through our membership data. And that way we're also, which is really important to note, we're able to advocate as a third party on your behalf to the university. A lot of universities are very strict. They want things to be reported through their system, which is very important. But we have worked with the universities over the past 2 years so they recognize us as a body that can advocate on behalf of students, as they recognize the complexities of why students might not feel comfortable to report. So when people are signed up as AUJS members, we're able to send out reliable information to combat that misinformation that spreads so quickly around our community. But we're also able to then make sure that students have first and foremost, the mental health support they need, and the general support they need to navigate university. The second thing is really important as well, is people during these times tend to shy away from campus life. And I understand why. I've experienced myself. It's very difficult to put yourself in a position where you feel like it's easier to sometimes hide the fact that you're Jewish than to be outwardly Jewish on campus. But I do really encourage, and a lot of the conversations we've had with universities is they're wanting to see Jewish life on campus, and it's hard for them to know, not out of a lack of good faith, but it's hard for university administrations to help us if they don't see the events that we're running. So we're really encouraging students. We've put in so much work to work with campus security so that our events are safe, as well as working with CSG, to work with university administration so they're aware of the issues that could come up. And to also, we've worked so hard with them, and we want to encourage every single Jewish student to get involved, be active. There is so much support available, and by being involved, you have access to that as well.
Now, look, I have many more questions I could ask Alissa, but she's able to stay with us for about half an hour this evening. So if you have any questions for Alissa, if you could pop them in the Q&A and we'll bring her back for more questions. But I just already want to thank you for all that you're doing and the sophistication of what you're doing. But could I invite now to join us on screen Dr. Antony Milch. And Antony is a child, adolescent and family psychiatrist with over 30 years experience in public and private settings, and also considerable experience as well with the Black Dog Institute. And welcome to you, Antony. You know, people have joined us for advice. You know, how can we assist children? And I think one of your key messages is going to be we need to think of children at the various stages of child development and also assessing each individual child. But I think one of your key messages is the importance of life going on. Welcome. Could you speak to that?
Thank you. Absolutely, Julie. I think it's tremendously important that there's a sense of stability and balance within family life, that we keep things going. We keep things going with school, with social events, with community engagement, with sport, to maintain a healthy lifestyle, to keep normal sleep patterns, regular exercise. Don't let this destabilize the factors that keep things in balance for us all.
And this idea of a model of competence, what does that mean? And what age groups is it most important for?
You know, I always refer to the model of competence. What I mean by that is that life's all about overcoming hurdles, overcoming developmental hurdles at each stage of development, whether you're a very young child or whether you're an adolescent, establishing yourself in the world as an individual. The model of competence is all about overcoming, facing the hurdle, having an experience of I can do it, I can overcome this hurdle, I don't shy away from it, and repeated experiences of I can do it leads to I feel good within myself, a sense of competence as we go about our life experience. My father used to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
And that's true. That's what you're saying. That is literally true.
Absolutely. And I think it's particularly relevant at times like this, when we're challenging, facing very challenging times, where we're facing existential threats in different ways, in different communities, this sense of, we shall overcome, we shall manage these hurdles.
I think one of your second key points is that children and young people look to adults for guidance. And I wonder if you could talk about that and perhaps illustrate what you're thinking. If you had a Year 12 student heading off to a university, or someone who's 18 or 19 at a university right now, and they see signs up around saying global the Intifada, which we've heard from Alissa was dealt with with great efficiency and authority by the university, but it still I'd call that a challenge for anybody. So what's your advice to parents and grandparents if they're hearing about that in front of their children? How should they react?
Well, the first thing is that it's okay to be real. It's okay to kind of share your experience. That's scary, that's challenging. I can only imagine what it must be like for you to be in this situation. It's okay to say these things. We don't have to shy away from it. On the other hand, we don't have to push it. And so it's all about having a conversation. It's about being able to open these things up in a manner which is open, real, and respectful, and without putting our own expectations on the young person to say, this is my experience, this is what I feel about it, what's your experience? And I think that with conversations, timing is always important. We don't want to push. We have to talk about it now. We have to solve all the problems now. And if the young person is in the middle of something else, and it might be an exam, It might be a social interaction. It might be that they're midway through a Call of Duty game, or for younger kids, Minecraft or Roblox. We want to have the timing in a place where there's time and space to talk about the experience. And very much for adolescents establishing themselves as young adults, it's about being interested in their experience, in what their learning is from this situation, rather than imposing on the young person, you should do this or you should do that. It's not about shoulds, it's about that experience and about sharing that experience.
Yeah, you say that authoritarian parenting simply doesn't work. What do you mean by authoritarian parenting, and what's the evidence around the impact it has?
One of the things we're wanting to do is to encourage our young, children, adolescents, to become their own people, to express their own experience. And indeed, they'll do it anyway, whether we like it or not. 3 types of parenting. The first is laissez-faire parenting, anything goes. There are problems about that. If we provide young people with access to drugs and alcohol, they use it more, not less. If we have authoritarian parenting, saying, this is what you have to do this, you have to do that, you're not allowed to do that, all that happens is that young people learn pretty quickly to shut down and to go underground. And if they go underground, then we lose them. We lose that opportunity to be a guide, to be a role model with regard to how they approach things. And so an authoritative approach, whereby we're real, we're clear, it's okay to do this, but there are limits. One of the concepts I really like is the idea of love and discipline, care and control, 2 dimensions when it comes to parenting, and that applies across the board. And so certainly, if we're telling young people they have to do this, or this is the only way to respond, or you must support this side or that side, it's not going to shape their experience, but rather they'll learn to suppress communication and, I'll tell someone else because they don't understand.
I'm going to come to questions shortly, but I just want to get a couple more thoughts from Dr. Antony Milch. I'll come to some questions and we'll meet other members of our panel as well. Just staying with this, the manner of communication, and I think you've said that the oxygen mask on the aeroplane analogy is important, that we're both wanting to model a calm self-reflection, a reflective capacity. Could you speak to the importance of modeling behavior and the kind of reflective capacity you're wanting to encourage in young people?
Children look to the adults. When it comes to trauma, they will be very influenced by how the adults respond to their experience. So if the adults are in a state of panic or high alert, or anger, uncontained emotion, the young person may feel that it's not safe to say anything because they don't want to make their parents more distressed or more upset about the situation. Alternatively, it may shut out communication around other aspects of what they're trying to work through, trying to make sense of both sides, or trying to make sense of the experience of the other. And so one of the things that adults need to do is to, first of all, look after themselves. The oxygen mask model is really very simple. If you're on an aeroplane and the oxygen mask comes down in the state of an emergency, the first thing you have to do is put the oxygen mask on yourself, then you can assist the dependent child. And that's particularly important for young children, not so much with adolescents, but certainly for young children. They need to know that the adults are okay. When it comes to sharing our emotional response, it's about sharing it in an age-appropriate manner with the child, to not be overwhelming, to not burden the child, and for it to be real in a way of communicating the experience.
Look, I'll come back to. Sorry, Antony, you go.
No. It's fine.
Well, I was just saying I will come back to you again, but I thought we might invite some questions from our audience. And so if I could, yes, hello, Dr. Lena Safro's here. Lena, a question, please, for our panel. I can always introduce another panel member. If you could turn on your microphone, Lena.
Apologies. So we've got a couple of questions to do, trying to work out the level of developmental maturity of the children. As a grandparent, how much should I discuss with a child between 6 and 9-year-old? And someone else asking, how can adults best assess the developmental level of maturity in deciding what they should be discussing?
Thank you. Dr. Milch, yeah.
It's a great question. One of the things about children is that different children have different capacities. When one of the programs that I'm recommending is the BRAVE program from the University of Queensland, and you'll receive information about that later, which is about the management of childhood anxiety. And the BRAVE program divides it into 3 different groups, from 3 to 7, from 7 to 11, and then for adolescents. And if you're dealing with a child, there are different issues around levels of competence. And so one of the problems with giving a specific age is that you'll know that some children are more able to deal with emotions than others. You'll know that, some children are very verbal and can sit down and have a conversation in a reflective manner. Others are kind of, too busy running around, kicking a ball. And by and large, girls are more receptive and open to dealing with emotion than most boys at a similar age. Now, if we've got a child who's in primary school, and another way of kind of dividing it is very simple: preschool, primary school, high school. And if we've got a primary school age child and they are, kind of asking questions, they're interested, then I think we should respond to that area of, that child's experience, that child's, what they know. And so always a good place to start is, to actually open up conversation around what we're seeing. Often there's a trigger, and the trigger might be a news item that's come up while they're in the car, or there's a newsletter that's come home from school, or the child raises something from their own lived experience. Then there's an opportunity to discuss and to talk about what's going on, and it's a two-way thing. It's not so much what we tell the child as actually the capacity to actually share the experience. And so to actually try to put words to feelings. And the concept of putting words to feelings, having conversations around the table, if something does come up and is a part of the lived experience of the family, to actually share the experience. And indeed, for grandparents, we live in a society in Sydney where there are a lot of Holocaust survivors in the community, where intergenerational trauma has been a part of the lived experience of extended families. There's often the opportunity to actually share that experience.
Lena, is there another question that may be particularly relevant to Alissa Foster from the Union of Students, because she's not able to stay with us for too long?
There are quite a few questions asking for practical solutions with dealing with hatred demonstrated on campus, specifically about the street protests and the hatred they display. And there is another one about a high school student who is the single Jewish teenager in a high-performing sports team, and dreading the backlash of anti-Semitism. Would you have any suggestions there, Alissa?
Yeah, I think my general approach I like to take when looking at sort of, if you want to call it advocacy or engaging in these spaces, is the vast majority of people haven't met a Jewish person before. They've never engaged with our community. They have a very basic, if anything, understanding of what they think Judaism is, and that's probably what they've seen on TV. So I think it's really important, not just during times like this, but instilling in high school kids and in children to be proud of being Jewish and to not shy away from sharing that. I can speak from personal experience, and it's not relevant to specific situations now, but when I was in my first year of uni, I never shied away from telling people I was Jewish. It's a very important part of my life. And what I remember in one of my first classes, I was invited out for drinks on a Friday night. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't go. And one of my friends asked, why can't you go? And I said, oh, it's a Friday night. I have the Shabbat. I'm Jewish. And we ended up having a whole conversation about that. And since then, this person admitted to me they've never met a Jewish person before. And they've always been acknowledging whenever they see things online, they come to me and they ask because they think, hey, I met that Jewish person once. They don't seem like the type of people who everyone else is making them out to be. And we have started to build a relationship around that. So I think in general terms, encouraging young kids and high school students and university students to not shy away from explaining that we are Jewish is really, really important. Most people don't know the impact that these sort of conversations have on Jewish people. They don't know that there's Jewish people who are listening. And we're able to break down those stereotypes just by being there and having a presence. But in regards to specific things that could happen on campus or the sort of comments that might get made, I like to look at things through two different lenses. Most people are ignorant rather than maliciously anti-Semitic. The people who are holding these protests and organizing them and putting up these posters on campus, they're a small minority of the group of students on campus, but they're loud. They might have a capacity to influence some of the ignorant, but we also have a capacity to engage and influence some of the ignorant. So firstly, it's de-escalate. When there are protests that are happening on campus, or if they are, we tell our students to not go and engage in them. If we make a big deal about we have a lot of channels to work with the university and raise our concerns, but if anything happens there or there's a counter protest, more people are going to come and it's going to potentially become a worse situation. Whereas that small minority, they'll preach to the choir, at least on campus. But what we do encourage people to do is, and we've done this a lot, is we hold events up on campus a week later where we have our AUJS banner and we're handing out free food and people come and chat and everyone loves free food. So finding ways to practice being Jewish and to focus our attention while still de-escalating and isolating these incidents is really important for us.
Can I invite Dr. Danielle Einstein to join us? And if you could stay with us on screen as well, Alissa. Danielle Einstein is a clinical psychologist, researcher and author with a particular interest in social media. And I just thought it might be interesting to deal with that question of social media and get Alissa's point of view as well before she has to leave us. But Danielle, I think one of your messages is similar to Alissa's in that we shouldn't assume that the majority of Australians are anti-Semitic, that the absorption of both the mainstream media, but social media in particular, can perhaps distort our perceptions. Could you speak to that, please?
Sure, Julie. I think the problem with social media is we see the scariest things. That's what's shared. And then we bond with each other over our anger and our outrage, and it builds our own community as well. So we get a kickback from escalating the situation via social media. And the problem at the moment is that many of us are triggered, and if there is any history of trauma, it might not be this type of trauma, but it might be through grandparents or through other sorts of traumatic incidents, for instance, rape or sexual assault, given the stories this week. We will be triggered and re-traumatized by reading or seeing videos, and then we react in a way that is quite irrational. So we lose sight of it's horrible and it's so understandable, but we ourselves lose our calm and our perspective on what is happening right now around us. And I mean, I would echo what Alissa is saying in terms of our role in terms of advocacy, I hope, is to, and as parents and grandparents, we need to try to find our sense of calm again. And as Antony was saying before, children look to us and they look to their social network. And we've seen that in past tragedies and in past terror events like 9/11. The children are looking to parents and grandparents for stability, and that's what makes them feel safe. So we have to be able to know when to walk away from our social media rather than reacting quickly and without thought to get rid of the emotion.
And that issue of the pause is critical, and also setting limits on when and how often. Could you just speak to that, Danielle, and then I might come to Alissa?
Yeah, well, I think at the beginning and now when you speak to people, I think everybody is starting to realize and recognize that self-care and detaching from the news and detaching from social media does not mean that you don't care. Okay. And it's actually essential for managing our emotions is that we do look after ourselves, that we do disconnect and go back, as Antony was saying, to healthy routines and positive events and positive community activities, as Alyssa's suggesting, is happening on campus, and focus on where can we build. That's what we've seen from past horrors and managing PTSD reactions and anxiety reactions, is that the best thing we can do is actually try to be positive and do positive things for ourselves. And that means with social media that we need to limit it. And it makes most sense to limit it to once a day, and to think about when that time of day is going to be. Is it going to be before work and then you'll go quite heightened to work? Is it after work, but not just before bed, but hopefully where you have other people around you that you can then talk one-on-one with to digest what you've just seen.
And you also recommend that that one-on-one communication with non-Jewish people is also important. Why do you think that, Danielle?
Because that helps anchor us in the reality of the situation. And I don't want to play down what, the role of it's very important for us, as we heard at the beginning, to be reporting any anti-Semitic incidents. If something happens, we must report it so that it can be recorded. But we also, as parents and as grandparents, need to remain accurate about what we are seeing and hearing, and realise that it is, as Alissa was saying, potentially, possibly, that it's the loudest voices that we are seeing in social media and not every voice. And I certainly hope that many of us who are not as triggered as others are able to have those discussions with non-Jewish people to present the story, to get people interested. And I think we can do that much better one-on-one in conversations than we can do via social media.
And again, we emphasise the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies website and newsletters and updates and as a source. Alissa, your response to what Danielle said, and your, what you're saying to your fellows, young people, students at uni, and younger students, about how to manage what is effectively a propaganda war from Hamas and their supporters, isn't it? This is an information and disinformation war.
Yeah, I'm on a AUJS conference right now, so I'm sorry if it's a bit loud outside. Everyone just came back from dinner. But we had a session on this today, actually, where we spoke about, as individuals, how we're feeling. And I think that's really important to have those conversations with other Jewish friends who are feeling the same way, especially around campus. But as Danielle said, I think it's so important to be having these conversations with your non-Jewish friends, and to encouraging people, as I mentioned before, not to shy away from saying you're Jewish. A lot of people, I believe the majority of people do act in good faith, and being able to explain how we're feeling is a really important thing for us to do. And I said today in the session that our greatest advocacy tool is not the politics. You can leave the politics to someone else who loves that stuff. The New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies is great at that stuff. But our best advocacy tool as Jewish students and as Jewish individuals is to explain what this means to us. So I was saying to students today, I don't like jumping and putting people in categories of saying they're anti-Semitic and they're inherently this, but I like having those conversations and explaining. So we're working with our student leaders who are going to be the campus leaders across Australia and New Zealand for next year as to how they can articulate and have those conversations. So allowing us to build relationship with non-Jewish students, but also to have that presence on campus and explain what it means.
Just invite Michael Genscher, the acting CEO of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, to join us. I just wondered, Michael, if you could turn on your mic, sir, but if you wanted to respond to Alissa. I just think her sophistication and rationality must be comforting to you.
Well, it is comforting, and it's certainly it's the right advice, and that's where it's so important for the communal organizations, as I mentioned in my intro, that people don't know where and who to report to. But what is so encouraging is, Alissa, the advice that is being given is consistent among the organizations that we deal with. And as long as we are giving kids and young adults the right information, consistent information, and information that's going to have outcomes, we're in a good place. And I think the information that or the advice that Alissa offers and the information she provides is exactly what our kids need right now.
And Alissa, what would you say, because I know you need to go shortly, but what would how are you managing psychologically yourself with the avalanche of imagery on the mainstream media and the vicious imagery on social media? As I understand, advice is to one strategy to feel engaged is to share positive information, accurate information. But how do you cope emotionally with the scale of what you're dealing with?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's in our first week following October 7th. The biggest thing we pushed for universities to understand is that if they do nothing, the one thing for them to do is to offer mental health support for students. Most universities have free mental health services available to the respective students at that university. Again, some university systems are better than others with it, but that's the thing we really pushed. And we did see some universities set up direct hotlines where they worked with AUJS to make sure that there was people on the other end of that who could support Jewish students in particular. But what we drill to our leaders and to our members is we are trying to facilitate spaces for people to have these conversations just with other people who are feeling the same. We have multiple WhatsApp groups where people talk through the night and they use that. A lot of people have found that really sort of actually a space where they can share with people who are feeling the same. Where it's such an isolating time for so many young people, to create these spaces for people just to share how they're feeling, to seek advice. But also we send positive information in there. We recommend books, we recommend movies. We are making sure, and as leaders, we're making sure that those groups are staying updated. That's really important for us as well.
Look, I just would like to welcome, if you could just stay with us for a little bit longer, Alissa, but I want to welcome Sandy Hollis, the head of education at the Sydney Jewish Museum. They see 36,000 school students a year, and Sandy's also involved in the Offering program, where they go to schools and to businesses. They're invited in, sometimes in response to anti-Semitic incidents and sometimes more broadly to deal with discrimination. I just wanted to welcome you, Sandy, and thank you for your patience. As you listen to Alissa, is there any comment you'd make about what you're seeking to do, particularly in the school student community, and what this young woman and her colleagues, her mates, are doing in the university community? Are there some analogies there?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to this forum. Look, the program is the Othering program that we have at the museum. Although Offering, we do a lot of that too. We work very closely actually with the Board of Deputies, and they refer many of these incidences to us. And we also get, people coming to the museum, schools coming to the museum. And we find that the schools, the audience is very receptive to our program. So The Othering program, which in particular deals with anti-Semitism, or othering being bullying or anti-anything really, is one that is pertinent. I think we've seen an increase in this kind of behavior post-COVID, and the Dr. Milch and Einstein would have seen this, and especially Dr. Einstein in your field, as students haven't been socializing. They've been absorbing a lot of media, and they are in silos. So whatever they're seeing, whatever they look at on the media is being reinforced all the time. They're only seeing one narrative, and they're not discerning. They're not curating their news feed. I think I was looking at statistics today, something like, and Dr. Einstein, you would correct me, that something like 60% of students at school get their news from TikTok, which is quite alarming, 30-second sound bites, obviously without much depth to it. So we go into schools and we deal with 3 levels. So we'll deal with students, we deal with school executive, and we deal with parents. So it's a program that talks about being upstanders. So we said there's no such a thing as a bystander. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody can, an example is we went into a school a couple of months ago where there had been a particularly vicious chat room where students had been involved in the chat room or had been silent in the chat room for many, many months. It was only one student who was brave enough to stand up and go to their parents when they saw something that was unacceptable. And it's important for students to understand that they have a role to play, that although obviously they shouldn't put themselves in any danger, but they need to stand up. And that's what the Othering program is. So it's not only anti-Semitism, it's homophobia, it's Islamophobia, it's misogyny, it's any kind of unacceptable behavior, and I think we're all on the same page with that. The other thing that is important that we try and teach is the fact that between stimulus and response there's a pause, and that pause gives us power and strength. And it's in that pause when we stop. And Alissa, this is basically what you said. It's when you stop, when you're not reactive, when you stop and reread that email before you press send. That's the power that we have to determine how we approach the different situations.
Look, I've heard we have a number of questions. So what I'd like to do, if I may, and I promise, Alissa, I'll say goodbye to you in 5 minutes because I know you need to go. But could I come to Dr. Safra and ask for questions, please?
Thanks, Julie. So we've got quite a range of questions directed at all of the panelists. I suppose this one is for Michael. From someone who teaches at TAFE, and one of her 15-year-old Muslim Arabic students made a Nazi salute in class. She phoned CSG and they took the details and they said she should be contacting the police. What would be your advice?
What would be my advice? And this is part of the investigation process. Just hearing 15-year-old kid, TAFE, I can't come up with an answer. I don't know the kid. I do know that the Nazi salute is now banned and illegal, and it's a crime. And at what point do we want to let it slide, or do we want to take action? Unfortunately, I'm of the mind, only because we're trying to be consistent in the application. That we look at the incident, and in this incident, a Nazi symbol. I don't know the background, so it's very hard to comment, but if he knows what he was doing, regardless of was he trying to incite or the teacher, there's all kinds of areas here, but yes, it's now a crime. And I think contacting the police is the right thing to do.
Could I ask Sandy Hollis your response to that? What options could the museum offer in a situation of a TAFE class?
Well, thank you for being able to sell the opportunity to sell what we do, because we actually work with all ages and levels. So we would do a similar program with primary schools, obviously to their level, if there were incidences in primary schools, up to professional, Army, Navy, professional, huge corporations. We do the same program. So we have a lot of material on our website, on the Sydney Jewish Museum website. If the TAFE teacher were to contact us, we would be very happy to give an educational, to give the students some kind of encounter. And as I said, and as Alissa actually said, it's very often a result of ignorance. It's and the fact that these people are only seeing one narrative. We have to remember that it's very often it's a statement, but it's not a statement born out of any kind of knowledge.
Alissa, I'll make this our last question to you, because I know you have to go, but your response to that question, it just strikes me. The level of ignorance about history is so unbelievable. I sometimes think non-Jewish people struggle to understand just how appalling it is to do the Nazi salute. But am I being too kind in such a response? What do you say?
Look, I don't want to speak, as Michael said, specifically on the incident, because I don't know the details of it. But obviously the Nazi salute there needs to be a line there, and that's a line, in my opinion, as the law says now. But I think there is also an element, particularly when it comes to high school kids and first and second year university kids who experienced the end of high school and their first sort of age of independence during COVID, which is a really important thing to note as well, which was touched on. That ignorance and jokes and banter do cross that line sometimes. And the way we approach that is, in my opinion, through education and outreach, which the Sydney Jewish Museum does a fantastic job of, and we do on campus as well, not with branding people as an anti-Semite or inherently malicious, especially people who've never engaged with our community before. So opening up that dialogue and showing them why that hurts and telling them why that hurts. That's probably the only chance I've ever had at an education on that topic.
Julie, if you, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to, recently, you might remember, just after October the 7th, there was an incident at the museum where two people walked past and gave the Nazi salute, the Sieg Heil, and they were arrested. And as part of the process, we invited them into the museum, and we did a program with these two young people. They were in their early 20s. They were totally ignorant. They had no idea what the salute actually meant. They were in tears. They were very deeply affected by the program, and I think that's 9 times out of 10 that would be the route that I would take.
And so this is an opportunity for you to talk about the artificial intelligence program and what you're doing there.
Yes, so we have a remarkable artificial. I hate saying artificial intelligence because in some instances people think it's manipulation of content, but we have started together with the Shoah Foundation. We have started filming. We've filmed 6 of our survivors who went through various experiments, various experiences. Some were camp survivors, some child survivors in hiding. And we now have what we call interactive biographies, where people can come in and talk to essentially a screen, and they get responses in real time. So, Dr. Milch's father was a very loved member of the museum community, somebody like Eddie Jacku, who passed away 2 years ago, you can come and talk to Eddie and get his responses to questions in real time. So, we're trying to preserve the educational content.
Just before I come to this, what are you thinking, Dr. Milch, as you listen to these responses to that question?
I think these are challenging circumstances for anyone to be placed in. One of the things that I always think about is the context. And if we're operating within a particular place, there are often systems in place within which we can rely. And so if it's within a school environment, there's a hierarchy within the school. If it's a TAFE environment, there will be a hierarchy within TAFE. And I think it's always important to be aware of the context and to operate within that context, rather than feeling like we're alone as individuals, to actually remind ourselves that we all have a right to feel safe, to be respected within our workplace, be it as a TAFE teacher, be it as a student, being within a community. And so if we're out on the street, it might be the police. But if we're within an organisation, I think we should rely upon the organisation in the first place, because they have a duty and responsibility for us all to create a safe environment for us as individuals, and to create an environment where there is zero tolerance around bullying, zero tolerance around aggressive behaviour, and so on. And so whilst I entirely respect and think the types of educational responses that Sandy's just been talking about are fantastic, and I highly support those interventions, I think we shouldn't feel like we're on our own. And I think it goes to Alyssa's comments about being able to relate our experience as individuals and to feel supported and respected. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, to feel safe, to feel respected, and to stand up and to be able to say what our own individual experience is like, because then that creates an environment where there's empathy and concern for one's fellow person in our community.
And listen, that has been very much your message with your Australasian Union of Jewish Students, isn't it? You know the rules and you action the rules in relation to the system. Is that correct? That's a big part of your work.
Yeah, and I do have to hop off in a minute, but I just want to emphasize that specifically. There's a lot that, and this is a very crazy time for all of us, but there are people who have been working tirelessly over the past 8 weeks to build relationships with the people who we need to have the relationships with. We have one example as well, ANU. They now have a house on campus where Jewish students can go to and just have a space that they worked really hard to get. So there's a lot of work that's going on, and we understand the rules and how we can get action taken quickly to support Jewish students and also to protect Jewish students. So I really encourage, as I know it's said a lot, but reporting is really important to be able to do that. But also joining AUJS, signing up as a member, allowing us, that's why we can send out all that information to you and make sure you have the correct and the resources you need.
Well, Alissa Foster, this is Deaf Sign Clapping. I don't know if others could join me in applauding young woman, because I know you're about to hand over the reins to someone else, but could I say as an older woman, it's so exciting to see the great leadership in the community. So thank you for being with us this evening. It really matters.
Thank you for having me.
See ya. And I'll come back to Lena, our question moderator, with another question. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. So the word anxiety comes up in quite a few questions, and specifically asking for advice on assisting high school students with a pre-existing diagnosis of anxiety and things escalating during this time.
Well, Dr. Milch?
I think it's tremendously important to think about the individual and the individual's vulnerability. So if we have an individual who is already vulnerable to anxiety, it makes sense that they will be more vulnerable in this current setting. It was for that reason that I recommended the BRAVE program, which gives very detailed advice, and psychoeducation is the key. So to actually, the concept is knowledge is power. So it's for the individual and their parents, and there are separate programs for 3 to 7, 7 to 11, 11 to 8, 12 to 18. The idea is to use a cognitive behavioral approach to be able to name the feeling, to identify the triggers, and to have a sense of balance then when thinking the issues through. One of the concepts I really like, because I kind of thought of it, is to use the fake news idea. Fake news, we all know about fake news. We all know about fake news on social media. And of course, in this time of Trumpian politics, we all know where fake news comes from. But of course, once we as individuals start, going through and, kind of revving it up in our own minds, it's very easy to be in this echo chamber within our own head. And of course, we've already talked about where some of those messages are coming through and being amplified through social media. So the idea is, first of all, to recognize young people who are likely to be more vulnerable. To secondly, if they're finding that they're feeling really anxious, to ground that in reality, to be real about the types of traps. And the very simple 5 traps that we think about are black and white thinking. So thinking about it is in an all or nothing way. We're either about to be, kind of killed and murdered in our beds, or there is no threat, because of course there are various ways of gradients to see about, to think about the type of risk that's involved, and to be balanced in that. So the first idea is to not be black and white about it, to see the shades of grey. The second idea is not to personalize it, not to take it personally, not to think it's all about me, everything's being directed towards me. Obviously, there might be a particular issue that comes up that's relevant to the individual, but we're talking about a global experience here, not about so much about the individual. Thirdly, to be careful about the idea of generalizing. And we've already been hearing about this, that it's not everyone is anti-Semitic or everyone is going to be a potential bully. And even people who might say things, they might have said it out of ignorance. And I think those comments by Sandy are particularly relevant in terms of what even young people outside the Jewish Museum were doing. They didn't really understand what they were doing. And as Alissa had been saying before, to actually ground some of what was happening for individuals, rather than generalizing from the experience, not seeing it as an all or nothing way, and certainly be careful of that process of magnification, amplification, catastrophization, so that everything becomes incredibly overwhelming. Now, of course, taking a step back from that, if someone is feeling anxious, you don't want to flood them with information. The first thing is to, one word, breathe.
Antony, thank you. I feel I should take some breaths before I speak, but I just wondered if you could just tell me a little bit more what you mean by grounding, because
Okay.
you've said that a few times, and just could you give us some examples?
Now, one of the major movements in the last decade in mental health has been the concept of mindfulness. It comes from meditation, and we often talk about the 5 senses, and using the 5 senses to ground us, to get us out of our head, calming ourselves down, slowing our breathing down, being aware I kind of do a lot of my work on the northern beaches and close to the harbour. And so, kind of the concept of walking along the beach, the sun on your skin, the wind in your hair, kind of smelling the sea, tasting the salt, having the sand between our toes, the rush of the water over our toes, and feeling the water draining away under the sand. That's an experience of mindfulness. And if we can be very present, be in the moment, be in the now, and actually get out of our heads. You'll see in the background in my office behind, I've got a picture of myself kayaking on Sydney Harbour, getting out on the water, getting out of our heads. I think it's important for us all.
Yeah. Look, thank you so much. I know Lena has got some questions on social media, but Sandy, I want to have one last question to you. Will you remind me before we close? But Lena, let's go to audience questions, please.
Thanks, Julie. So we have quite a few questions requesting assistance on practical tips on how to manage or help adolescents manage their social media use.
I'll come to Danielle Einstein. Thanks, Danielle. Can you give us your key tips in a kind of to-do list?
I think the key tips actually follow from what Antony was saying at the beginning about the type of parenting that we're doing. It really involves us talking to our teenagers about what they're seeing on social media and what it's making them feel. So are they feeling angry because of what they're saying? And when they're feeling angry, what do they do when they feel angry? Do they immediately post? What we see in social media, like I was saying before, is first of all, people manage their anger, and it's the anger is hiding anxiety. I spoke about that last time, so I won't repeat that again. And they get boosted and feel better sometimes from posting more and get stuck on the social media. So, but to understand that, they've got to recognize that that's what's going on. So we can talk about, on the one level, the emotional responses and how that pulls you in to do more. And there might be other people kind of supporting or watching us comment. Like I've seen certainly in some chats, people saying, let's go and have an argument. And they're kind of, there's an element of which people are buoying each other up in their anger and their frustration with the whole situation and their fear. And that's obviously something that I would question, is that useful? Because we know that there are chatbots that are posting some comments, and that you will see some people from our community having long arguments with chatbots. And there's obviously that might be happening for our children and teenagers, but we need to talk to them about it, and we need to see and do it in a really non-judgmental way, where I can understand that that you're feeling that way, and you're feeling like you're doing something that's helping and constructive, and you might even be feeling better, and other people are supporting you in that. But what happens when you stop? Are you able to get off it, or do you feel like you need to then do more and more and more? Have you got other healthy things that can calm you down? Is it affecting your sleep? Like, look at the problems that's affecting for the teenager. But there is another side. Sorry, Julie, I can see you want to talk, so I'll stop. I want to talk about anxiety as well.
No, please go, Danielle. Thank you.
So that would be the anger that's pulling people in. But the other side is actually anxiety. And certainly in our own research that we published this year on Australian school students, we saw that 55% of students who had low levels of fear of missing out, so they actually said they don't mind missing out as much, that those students were actually saying that they need their social media and to be connected in order to manage their anxiety levels. Now, to me, that's actually quite concerning, because I think that shows that as a community and as individuals, we are losing the ability to calm ourselves down without being connected to another person. And in the current situation, one of the issues that comes up is if we are only connecting with our family or friends who are similarly enraged or anxious, they will actually not help us truly calm down. They actually give us more of an idea. Yes, you're right to be frightened. You're right to be concerned. And they actually rev our anxiety up. And then they take us into those thought errors that Antony was just explaining. So it's not helpful that we only connect at a time like this with like-minded people. Yes, it's good to do it one-on-one, and it's good to do it, I think, in person. And I think we need to pick who we're doing it with, and those people need to not be triggered at the moment with, as I mentioned before, their own past traumas. We want to find good people who will help us be critical and understand what's going on emotionally when we're seeing things, because we want to be accurate in our assessment of the danger when we're dealing with anxiety. Anxiety is all about managing danger. No matter what type of anxiety it is, it's always in response to us thinking on some level that there's danger, and we do something to make ourselves safe. But that thing that we do to make ourselves safe is actually not helpful, and it continues the anxiety cycle. So to understand that, we need to be, I suppose what I'm talking about for the moment is that social media is not a great way at all. In fact, it's a terrible way of handling our anxiety. And I think it's one of the reasons our device use and dependence on devices, as well as social media, is one of the reasons we're seeing this major community concern about levels of anxiety and depression in our young people. And now we're all experiencing it as well, because we're all so concerned. We've been sucked in. All of a sudden, we can see what our young people were going through the last few years when we've said, why are there rising levels? We're all pulled in to the same awful systems. So there's a lot to learn, and we can learn it side by side with our teenagers.
Just one quick word, if I may, because we've had an emphasis on one-on-one communication. We've had an emphasis on the pausing and the grounding that Dr. Milch mentioned. But just in a nutshell, powerful distraction is another technique you believe in. Could you just explain that, please?
Well, that's also similar to what Dr. Milch was saying, that we just have to have other ways that we calm ourselves down. And it's all right for those ways. Sometimes those ways won't make us feel great, but they do give us a bit of a sense of accomplishment. So it might be that I'm learning to play something on the guitar, or it might be nature, or it might be the calming with my senses, or doing some sort of craft. I might be doing it badly. For some people, it will be cleaning a part of their room, or like decluttering something. But it's actually just getting away and having space, and actually having your device in another room while you do it. So that, because one of the problems at the moment is that we've got so many devices in our homes, and when there is a device nearby, you reach for it because you have a thought, and then you just can't help it but to reach. Let me see, does someone want me? Am I needed? Is there something good for me? Or is there something I'm worried about that I need to see? So, and just the sight of your computer will make you think, oh, is there a work email I need to go and check now? Or is there something? So you don't even need a notification anymore. We used to say, and I still like to say, get rid of your notifications because they interrupt you, and they'll remind you that your phone is there. But now just the sight of it. So get it out of your space while you're doing that powerful distraction.
Look, thank you so much. I'm very ashamed to tell you that I'm seeing Times of Israel notifications flashing at the top of my screen because I haven't turned it off. But if I could just invite Sandy Hollis to join us again, Head of Education at the Sydney Jewish Museum. This is a question really from me, I've got to be honest with you, but we were talking earlier about the importance of not being defeated in the war of information and propaganda that's pumping out from Hamas and their supporters. And I'm just wondering how you manage the willful, I guess what feels to me sometimes the willful ignorance of people. So for me, what happened on October 7 was a classic pogrom. We could have been in a medieval Eastern European shtetl. Is that the right word? I might not have the right word there. And I've seen academics that I know are out there on social media and in the streets chanting from the river to the sea. Now, there's willful ignorance there about, you only got to Google pogrom and you've got to then just think, where are the Jews from the river to the sea? So help me, how because of all your experience working with communities and with school children, giving accurate information about the Holocaust, what lessons are there to learn that can guide us now to address that willful ignorance?
Well, first of all, it shows us how much work there is to do, and I've got to say that as an educator, one has to be an optimist. Otherwise, what is it for? It's kind of like a drip feed, it's kind of like we dripping in, and hopefully it'll dissipate, and well, it'll spread the knowledge. Look, I think we're living in difficult times, but it's not 1939. We aren't living in times of the Holocaust. We're living in certainly in my lifetime, this is the most difficult difficult period of time that I've lived through from a Jewish perspective. But we've got a community that is there to embrace us. I think we have to look for sparks of light, and there are many sparks of light. The number of calls that I've got from all kinds of wonderful people, from all parts of society, from all religions and communities. It's heartwarming, and we have to encourage people to make a difference. We're living to work towards civil society, and we've got to believe that we can do it. That's what education is all about.
That's it, exactly. And if I could ask Michael Genscher to join us again on screen, and I suppose we've had a call to look for the light there from Sandy. You're dealing obviously with the authorities in New South Wales at all levels, and probably federal authorities as well. Can you speak to where you see the light in this challenging situation in terms of the response you're getting from our institutions of our society?
I think the light I'm seeing is there's a few lights, which is great.
Could you speak up, Michael? You seem to be a bit
sorry.
busy. Thank you.
Better?
Yeah.
I'm seeing a few lights, Julie, and I think one of I guess the most positive things I'm seeing is resilience from people who are reporting, and there's a strength in the reporting where it's not in the reports that we get, it's not so much the fear of what's happening, but the responsibility. And that's actually a position of strength in that reporting, not letting somebody off the hook. And I'm seeing a great resilience. But in terms of lights, dealing with, government, as you mentioned, we cannot deny, many in our community, especially in the Jewish community, thought with the incoming Labour government at the state level, the sky was going to fall. The government has been fantastic. Chris Minns and the cabinet, and to be honest, the opposition have been wonderful to the Jewish community during this crisis. Sure, there are areas that we would like to have further strengthened. The Teachers Federation is an issue that's not government, but certainly there's pressure from government. But I think the light is, as a community, we are supporting each other. We are cohesive in a way that I've never seen. Our resilience, our strength, and the support we're getting. Those are the lights for me.
Thank you. And a final word from you, Antony Milch, if I could. What people have called in for help for their children. And so what's our most important message, particularly for younger children who'll be seeing perhaps brutal international anti-Semitism for the first time? What is it?
I'd like to echo Michael's words. One of the phrases that I like best is the concept of resilience in the face of adversity. And it's one of the core principles of contemporary approaches to child development. It's the title of a very famous paper in the child and adolescent psychiatry literature from Professor Sir Michael Rutter, resilience in the face of adversity. And my own concept is, avoidance is the enemy, that we need to face the issues that we're dealing with, and that we don't need to be terrified. Yes, we need to have a balanced assessment of risk. Yes, we need to face the hurdles that we need to address. And the concept is of the development of competence.
Look, can I just do a deaf sign clapping, if I may, as we move to the end of our session, and on behalf of our viewers and the future viewers who will look at this on the Wolper Jewish Hospital website, because we have been recorded this evening and we'll be able to distribute this. Thank you to Dr. Antony Milch, child, adolescent and family psychiatrist. Thank you to Sandy Hollis, the head of education at the Sydney Jewish Museum. Thank you to Dr. Daniel Einstein, a clinical psychologist, researcher and author, and to the marvellous Alissa Foster, the outgoing president of the Australasian Union of Jewish Students, who was with us earlier. A reminder too that the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies has a fantastic website, www.newsouthwalesjbd.org.au, nswjbd.org.au, and they have the Israel at War resources and information. You can sign up for a newsletter with regular information, information about counselling for community members, Jewish Care, Jewish House and others, and the Israel at War portal. And Linda Ben-Menesha, well known in the Sydney Jewish community and beyond, is talking about Israel sessions aimed at embracing and empowering the community, and you can contact her and she will come into community venues and to homes. This is our last session of the Wolper Wellbeing program. You will be sent a survey for your feedback about this evening. Please fill it in. They really do read it and really do adapt what they do. I want to give a special thank you to Dr. Lena Safro, our general practitioner, who works with us each webinar to monitor questions and to bring them to you. A reminder, this is our final Wolper Wellbeing webinar for 2023, and the team are working right now on plans for 2024, and they will send out information to you. Thank you to Ruth Guth and Michelle Stockley and the others at Wolper Jewish Hospital. My name is Julie McCrossin, and it's been an absolute honour and a privilege to be with you. And so thank you and good night.